What is the greatest comeback to an insult you've ever heard? A friend in high school on our way to a track meet. He was staring at a car in the parking that was really nice. When this bag saw him, bag, why bothering looking at that when you know you'll never be able to get one? My friend, the same reason you watch Peon. The entire bus erupted and it's still one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Context. John Oliver from HBO interviews Stephen Hawking. May he rest in peace. Joe. And there may be a universe where I am more intelligent than you. SH. There may even be a universe where you are funny. I lost count of how many times I've seen that video and it still makes me laugh. The whole interview is just hilarious. Joe Pine interviewing Frank Zappa. Joe. I guess your long hair makes you a woman. FZ. I guess your wooden leg makes you a table. How does a dude named Pine have a wooden leg? What if it's mahogany or oak? I didn't even think about that. Good stuff. Not even clever, but one of my favorite Zappa lines, because it's so outlandish, is may you come to life and kiss you on the face. Nobody looks good with brown lipstick. Was that just Zappa's way of saying don't be a cuss-ass? A guy makes fun of his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend also rubs his head and says, "Wow, you're right, that had to hurt." I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she doesn't look like me. Savage. Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." I used to work with this like 70-year-old woman. She was her supervisor, and one day one of the ladies who worked with us told this old lady to kiss my ass and the old lady replied, "Where do I start? You're so fat your crack goes all the way up your back." Gran, how many times do we have to tell you? We are not a crematorium. During World War I, Switzerland had a tiny standing army, but they were very skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250k Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500k German troops. The Swiss said, "Shoot twice and go home." Switzerland is actually neutral now in part, because they were such good fighters. Many European countries hired Swiss mercenaries to fight for them. At least, that's what I heard in a YouTube video. Yeah. But nowadays is just to avoid getting wrecked by any enemy Switzerland might face. Since it is in the middle of Europe and with a very small army, Switzerland is also not worth taking. There's nothing there to justify losing hundreds of thousands of men in the Alpine passes to Swiss artillery and marksmen, even if you do take the country. David Letterman. I'm not as dumb as I look. Tina Fey. How could you be? I miss Tina Fey in movies. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back with, "It depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress." Imagine hitting someone with such a burn that people are discussing it 250 years later. If you weren't so stupid, what would you be? Asks the husband. The wife replies, without even skipping a beat, "Single." I was the one insulted, but not the one with the comeback. I was out with a co-worker and her friends, and my buddy and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like pussy." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, that must be me. I just ate. It was amazing. Smoth." Goddamn. That man knew what he was doing. He was just waiting to use that line. Definitely a great comeback, but not to an insult, more to an annoyance. I was a camp counselor for a few years at a summer camp. One day my group took a hike to a large rock where we had lunch. My campers were between 8 and 10 years old. This one kid we'll call Jeff keeps poking another kid we'll call Matt in my group to look at this hole in the rock. It's so cool. It's like 6 inches deep and the other kid is clearly getting annoyed just trying to eat his lunch. He keeps shoving sticks into the hole and trying to get everybody to look at it. Finally Matt just puts down his sandwich, looks at Jeff, and goes, "I'll be 6 inches deep in your mum later if you don't shut up." I was trying so hard to be stern with this kid for saying something so inappropriate, but I kept cracking up. It was just such a disproportionately ridiculous thing to say coming from a 9-year-old. To be fair, those are impressive numbers from a 9-year-old. 9-year-olds are freaking merciless. My grandma got into a fight at the grocery store with the guy who told my 9-year-old brother to move the frick out of the way. They were going at it and his final words were, "Suck my dong, itch." She said across the store if I could find it. Itch. Grandma don't play. Hurrah, she's always trying to fight somebody. You had me at my grandma got into a fight at the grocery store. My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother generally came out on top, as she was fierier. One time though, she was asking him to do a bunch of stuff, and he muttered, "If you'd lose some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him, and glowered. "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately." He replied, "You're going to cut off your foot." Man, nobody bickers like old married couples bicker. They've had decades to perfect their craft. Also, they know practically everything about each other, including what will really hit home. Also, how to produce insults that are scathing in the eyes of others, but not actually damaging to each other. If they truly wanted to dig into each other, they would have figured out how to make each other want a divorce by now. Quiet guy in my art class got called queer bait. He replied with, "If I'm the bait, then you're the catch of the day." My 10-year-old cousin was pushed aside by an older student at school who also felt the need to call him a gay child. My cousin told him not to get his hopes up. You wished became the kryptonite to gay jokes in my elementary school for a while growing up. Do your parents know you're gay? My first exposure to a trick question. Do yours? On a construction site one afternoon, different trades were working in the same area. Like silly team sports, the Sparkies always hang with the Sparkies and the Turd Wranglers always hang with the Turd Wranglers, and anytime they're together it turns into a pointless dong measuring contest. Usually not literally. One particularly childish exchange saw two men chopping back and forth. "My dong biggest, blah blah blah." Finally one of them spits out this classic, "I've got girth like a can of corn," and the clapback was unforgettable. "But you've got length like a can of tuna." Everyone busted up. Mr. Girth tried to hide his embarrassment, but was tied up. No comeback. And a room of men laughing uncontrollably. Good times. I must know the other names for the rest of the trades. Carpenters are chippies. What are you looking at? I'm still trying to find out. When I used to say, "What are you looking at?" to my mom, she used to say, "I don't know." The label fell off. I used to respond with, "Good question." Fresh Prince had that one in the earlier seasons. Will is in a step-up class with the younger kids. One of them looks at Will in disdain. So he asks, "What are you looking at?" And the kid replies, "Not much." Will rolling his face at the burn makes the scene. Saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day, and he says something along the lines of, "The first time I had X it was terrible. The first time I had X, and a woman chimes in with, "You mean yesterday?" Crowd laughs for a while, and while the comedian is waiting for them to calm down you can see the gears turn in his head. Once it gets down to basically a few chuckles, he just says, "Glad you remember," and the crowd just lost their it. It was amazing. Okay, now we need the source of this clip. A friend of mine was getting itched at by these two identical twin girls in a class I had once. He replied with a troubling look on his face and said, "If you two are identical, how come only one of you are hot?" That dude played the long game as those two girls looked rather perplexed for the rest of the session. Fixed. I have something similar. Have a group text made up of 5 people. It's called 3 of my favorite people. When I only had one granddaughter I always told her she was my second favorite granddaughter. When the second one came along she told me now I'm third. Right. Sorry on this topic. If you want to incite chaos, go on a girl's Instagram and find a group photo of 3 or more. Then comment, "You two look great." Okay, Satan. I expected a better insult from someone of your upbringing and education. LOL, my mom was a librarian and pulled this one on a rude patron. Are you getting smart with me? Would you be able to tell? Savage librarians are my favorite thing in the world. That's hilarious, holy it. Glenn McGrath, Aussie cricketer, got frustrated with Edo Brandis as his every attempt to stump Brandis failed. This is what happened next. "McGrath, why are you so fat?" "Brandis, because every time I frick your wife, she gives me a biscuit." "I always liked Marsh v. Botham. Marsh, how's your wife and my 2 kids?" Botham replies, "The wife's fine. The kids are retarded though." I read this aloud to my family. "Daughter, how could you say that in good conscience about your own kids?" "Wife, I say it all the time. That joke is turning out to be the gift that keeps on giving." Not heard, but read. Easily the Spartans reply to Philip II of Macedon. As Philip II of Macedon was conquering Greek city-states left and right, Sparta was left alone. Philip had achieved a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. Philip sent a message to the Spartans saying, "If I invade Laconia you will be destroyed." never to rise again. The Spartans replied with one word, if. This is actually where the word laconic came from. Most ancient accounts make the Spartans sound like the masters of trash talk. The Persians also told them at one point their arrows would blot out the sun, and a Spartan replied that it'd be nice to fight in the shade. Also, it's a long repeated response, but when they were told to lay down their arms, their response was mal and lave, which roughly translates to come and take them. The Spartans were a slogan-making machine. Another famous one was Greek literator with tonus tan, Greek literator with tonus epitas, either with it or on it. It was said by a mother to her son, when giving him his shield before going to battle. It means return home with it, or on it. Dead. Dropping the shield was the ultimate act of cowardice. Ripsaspis, shield dropper, was the worst thing that you could ever be. A combination of coward and traitor. The quote is not meant to be taken literally. Dropping your shield means being defeated, so it should be interpreted more like come back victorious or don't come back at all. It's not about the specific act of dropping the shield, it's about the ethos of the warrior. Win or die, there's no retreat. As evidenced by Leonidas and his men making a stand. They literally had no place to return to. They had to die. They sent message back home, saying, tell the Spartans that we lie dead here Toskina Nimasi Pithamini, faithful to their laws. As a side note, the Greek army still uses the slogans. One of the random generated missions you can get in AskReddit Odyssey is a Spartan mother who basically says her son dropped his shield, so go kill him. Whenever I get that mission, I'm like, harsh, then I go kill the son and bring his dead body back to her. I've been called worse things by better people. For context, this was famously said by former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau when he found out Richard Nixon called him an AOL. I didn't know that. That's awesome. My friend's mom said it when her son called her a itch. That son of a itch. One of my coworkers was cold calling customers, trying to get appointments to drum up business. One of them told him to go frick his hand, and he responded with, I've got the penciled in 4-3. I should be done by 4 if you'd like to come in for an appointment then. The guy laughed his ass off, and ended up coming in for the appointment. You sure do talk a lot for never saying anything. In Mexico, we use the word cantinfleur for that. It comes from a comedian with a long career from the 30s to the 80s named Canteen Floss, and that was his shtick. Talking too much, but never saying anything. Oh man, I remember watching lots of episodes of Canteen Floss when I was younger. My parents introduced me, and I couldn't stop laughing. I haven't watched that show in 2 decades. Me? We should learn from our mistakes, my friend. So that's why you have a younger sister? Easy. Now, don't let your brains go to your head. I am definitely using this one. My grandma asked my cousin, who'd had lots of partners and 2 kids at this point, if she was ever going to get married. Cousin, it's not the same nowadays. We don't buy cars without test driving them first. Grandma, yeah, but they don't let you put 100,000 miles on them either. Point goes to Granny. The classic, you're adopted. At least my parents chose to have me. Had a friend growing up who had an adopted brother a year or so younger. They would always talk it and fight a bit here and there, and one time my friend says to his brother that he was adopted and can go frick off. He knew he was adopted. And without missing a beat he shot back at my friend, yeah well clearly you weren't enough for mom and dad. That's why they bought me. Yes, he used the word bought. Once heard it as after they had you they got to pick one they actually wanted. From the outside stuff like that sounds rough, but they seem not to care much. Adopted. I tell my brothers that they paid for me and big money. And I'm the youngest, so they really wanted me most, LOL. Come on, stop telling me how to live my life. I don't tell you how to live your life. It's not like I come down to the docks at night, knocking the sailors' cocks out of your mouth. Jimmy Carr puts down hecklers like a gentleman boss. I was warned about you before the show actually, by your mom. She said my lad's coming to see your show. At least I think that's what she said. She had her mouth full at the time. I assume she was talking to me. I wasn't the only one there. Anything I've thought of more than an hour after the insult. The French have a phrase for this. Esprit d'escalier, or the spirit of the staircase. The witty retort you think of as you are leaving down the front steps. In German, it's Treppenwitz, which means the same thing. Well, the jerk store called and they are running out of you. In middle school a boy asked when I was going to grow some boobs. So I asked him when he was donating his. I'm still really proud of that one. Damn, this is good. Like I said, this was middle school. I'm 30 and still riding that high. I'm not the type of person to shoot back, so this was very out of character for me. He was a friend too that just decided we weren't for a few weeks. The greatest comeback I witnessed was when Kumail Nanjiani was on Mean Tweets and someone asked, "Is your dong multiple colors?" And he said yes. Every shade of your mom's lipstick. Throwing shade. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.